I want to say thank you again for your suggested donations of $20. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for supporting this. And thank you for helping myself and my wife through her medical problems and to assist us in paying for some of our legal bills. But we do have a crack legal team on this, but it does cost money. So there we go. So let's take off here. Let me see if I can dazzle, stun, and amaze you with some incredible things. And so first off, I just wanted to point out that if you want to get in touch with us at strangeuniverseradio.com, here are my books. Actually, Black Seraph was the first novel that I did. The second book is called Dark Prophet, Veil of the Antichrist. Third book is Sands of Time, Volume 1, Sands of Time, Volume 2, and Sands of Time, Volume 3. These books, by the way, they're award-winning. They have 5-star ratings on Amazon.com. We've got something like 1,000 comments of people who say that these are the best books they've ever read. So if you want to know everything, these are true stories about Area 51, given to me, the journals of a man who moved on. I'm not sure if he moved on in time or space or what have you, but before he left, he made sure that I had these journals. And it tells the true story of everything from Area 51, the Dulce Mesa, time travel, the Dulce Wars, the development of personal time travel. So, and not only just the printed books, but we also have audio as well. So dynamic audio, where I've read all the books. So once again, on our website, strangeuniverseradio.com. Come on down, order the books, get a reading. And as I said, the books are fantastic, and everybody likes them. If you have friends that are just getting started in the world of UFOs or conspiracies or this entire, it's daunting. You got to start like 70 years ago or so, or you get your your sons, your daughters, your friends, your neighbors, buy them these books, and they start at the beginning and go all the way through everything down the line. Just one thing I wanted to point out to you, because this is one of the more remarkable photos that I've seen. I'll be throwing not just the Antarctic stuff at you, but some history and topics that I love and enjoy and things that I've been teaching my entire life. Right here, we went down to Guatemala, and in Guatemala, we did a ceremony with a jaguar priestess, and she is all about the mysticism of Guatemala and the Maya. And while we were doing a jaguar ceremony, and I'd actually purchased a jaguar mask with a couple of friends of mine, a jaguar actually appeared in the smoke. And so for me, this is fantastic because my wife and I breed and show Norwegian forest cats, so we definitely have a cat connection. But here you go, this jaguar actually physically appeared in the smoke just to show you that these are the kind of totems that kind of come to me in my work to help enlighten all the human race. Because you can actually see his paws, you can see his snout, you can see his ears, and he's actually getting up on his hind legs, doing something with his paws, which is what my cats actually usually do. All right, I want to start with. I was hoping that would do something. There we go. I want to start with the secrets of the Great Pyramids of Giza. Now, this is going to lead us to not only the mysticism of what's happening right now in Antarctica, but it'll lead us to, I think, the fate of mankind, which Antarctica is really all about. So starting with the secrets of the pyramids, in just a few moments, I'm going to go through a 7,000-year plan, a messianic agenda that has been laid out for the human race. So I want to let you know that even though there's a lot of strife and tribulation coming, even though we're living through an exodus period between February 21st of 1999 all the way through October 31st of 2039, that it's all part of a plan. There's a cosmic awareness, there's a cosmic plan, there are God and gods and messiahs at work in all of this. So when you understand the Great Pyramids, the legend is, of course, they're in Cairo, Egypt. Great Pyramid itself is 455 feet high. It's 30 times the mass of the Empire State Building. It was the tallest structure on Earth until they built the Eiffel Tower in, I think it was 1898 or so. But the Great Pyramids of Giza were believed to be built by a biblical patriarch known as Enoch, and that Enoch, who was the great-grandfather of Noah, was also known as Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes the Thrice Great, Mercury, going back and forth between the gods. And but Enoch, in the book of Enoch, which is a book we found in 1777 in an Ethiopian Bible, Enoch himself worked with I guess you would call them the Nephilim, the sons of God, the angels of God at that time. Now there were 72 of them. They were led by a being named Semyaze. not the Semyazi from the Billy Meyer case. But they were responsible for building pyramids all across the world. And you may wonder, why was this agenda about building pyramids? Well, pyramids not only radiate mystical power and energy, not only do they connect with the gold molecules within the human body, but at the same time, pyramids are known to stabilize landmass. So that when you actually put it, and especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, which sits dead center of all the landmass on the planet, also it sits directly on top of a huge granite plate, so that if you were to resonate or harmonate or like ring the pyramid like a bell, let's say you put the Ark of the Covenant in the center of the pyramid, you could actually vibrate the entire planet. The whole Earth could actually vibrate from the location where the Great Pyramid is. So many also believe that the moon at some point was artificial, and that the moon was parked in orbit, in a perfectly circular orbit, an artificial satellite, if you will, and that pyramids were necessary to make sure that all the various landmass on the Earth then harmonized with this new object that was placed in the sky. So, but there's a lot of interesting things about the pyramids as well. For example, the pyramids, as you know, not only are they at the center of landmass on the planet, literally the belt of the world, but there's 3 pyramids there that replicate the belt of the constellation Orion, which to the Egyptians was the god Osiris, the messianic giant, again, the god Osiris. And the 3 pyramids, as most of you know already, were designed to completely replicate the positions of the 3 stars in the belt of Orion. Now, the descending passage of the pyramid is interesting because, as you can see, there's 2 chevrons actually on the pyramid upside down, which represent the male and the female. And the belief is that when you entered the pyramid, that the pyramid was death, really. That's why people think it's a funerary monument, even though there's never been a pharaoh or anybody of importance ever buried in a pyramid. They're all buried up in the Valley of the Kings. But the downward path was, or the entrance of the pyramid, you can see the chevrons there, were all about the separation of the limbic system, which is the lizard brain in human beings, of the limbic system, to divide not only men and women from each other, but to divide the male and female parts of the brain, the bicameral fissure that then separates these parts of the brain. Now, the Maya talk about veils over these parts of the brain, but we'll get there. So who was it that did this separation? Who was it that injured man in such a way to set us on the path of death? Here we go. Here's this very nice man saying, "Come on into the pyramids. Come on in. Come on in. Come on in and experience the afterworld. Experience death." Because when you come out, this same guy runs up to you and gives you a couple of sodas and says, "Welcome back to life, my friends." And that's the experience I had with my friend Pete Carroll, who is the coach of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, this star is interesting because this star is called Thuban, and it's in the constellation of Alpha Draconis. And at the time of about 2600 BC, it was the North Star in the sky. We've gone actually from Thuban to Vega to Polaris as we progressed. But it was when this North Star directly aligned with the downward passage. This is in the constellation of Alpha Draconis now, the red dragon that's talked about in the book of Revelation. And here you have Draco, actually, and of course in UFO extraterrestrial lore, we talk about the Alpha Draconians, we talk about the Draco, we talk about the possibility that maybe they're running things, or maybe they're the government, as an example. But the downward path, as you can see, of the pyramid in sorry, I gotta wear my glasses here for a second. In 2623 BC is when that star, Thuban, the dragon star, which is also related to Set, Seth, or Sutek, which were the serpent gods that were supposed to be the brothers, kind of the evil brothers, if you will, of Isis, Osiris, Horus, Thoth, all the various gods of Egypt. So the description here is that now man enters the path of death. And as they enter the path of death in 2141 BC, the block that you see there is actually aligns with the constellation of the Pleiades. So the downward path of the pyramid directly aligns with the constellation of Alpha Draconis and the star Thuban, pointing to the serpent in the garden, if you will, and the limbic system, which is the reptilian part of the brain, that then divides us from our divine self, that then actually takes the male and the female, the completion, the wholeness, and splits that apart. And so we're conflicted. There's there's covers, there's veils on various parts of the brain that keep us from evolving. But when in 2141 BC, the block in the pyramid directly aligns with the constellation of the Pleiades, so it points out that there's something going on with the Pleiades, something going on with those gods, goddesses, beings, whatever, that are all about the upward path of man. So let's go down all the way to the bottom of the pit, because this will relate to what's happening in Antarctica and the new sets of pyramids that they've actually found down there, which is an interesting story. And once again, I'm sorry we got started a little bit late. I'm not sure if we can go late or not because of the schedule here at the studio, so I'll try to give you as much information as I can. So down we go in the path of death, and as it when you see what's going on with the pit, so there's the pit. To be able to get down into it, you go from being outside the pyramid where you're an immortal being to now coming into this restricted space. So you can see you have to hunch over, you have to take on limitations as you go down this inexorable path all the way down into the well, I skipped a few things there. All right, so as you go down the downward path of the pyramid, right here, the physical path of spiritual death for the mass of humanity. Then it flattens out in 1521 AD, which of course is the Renaissance. It's Nostradamus. It's Michelangelo. It's Leonardo da Vinci. So you have this Renaissance occurring. So it stops the downward path of humanity. But the challenge is that then for 500 years we go from 1521 all the way up to 1914, which is the beginning of the First World War. And at that point in the First World War, not only is there a great enlightenment on the earth, because you actually can stand up inside the pit right about the year 1900. Let me explain briefly the time coding that I'm talking about in the pyramid. The pyramid is based on what's called the pyramid inch. And the pyramid inch is only 1/500th. It's a hair's breadth off the inch that we actually use today. And of course, it's interesting that we actually count our measurements in base 12 inches to a foot, 3 feet to a yard, et cetera, because 12 was actually the measurement system of the gods, because it was believed the gods probably had 12 fingers and 12 toes. But as we go down into the pit, you can stand up about the year 1900, and then suddenly 1914 and the First World War come along down here in the pit. And this is actually, it's not exactly right, this particular time coding of the pyramid, but it does show you that as you enter into the pyramid, against the far wall on the pyramid here, against the far wall is the First World War. You can see this big divot here for the Second World War as people are then moving forward. Now it is interesting because the edge of the pit here actually starts about approximately December of 2004. Well, for those of you who maybe remember back that far, you'll remember that this was the great great Asian tsunami, the tsunami that hit Thailand and Phuket and killed about 250,000 people worldwide when this triggered. That happened literally on the day of people falling into the pit. Now there's a lip on the pit that shows us that there's a warning. And the warning goes from about 2004 until about 2008 when the great economic crash happened. And those who heed the warning and those who turn right or upwards or towards God or towards the Creator manage to then get around the pit. So this is kind of interesting because it really points to the mythology that was generated by movies like 2012, by people who were talking about the mass destruction in the Mayan calendar of December 21st, 2012 being a date where we were all going to be destroyed. Well, we get around that, and now we think that everything's fine and that everything's okay. And this is where, once again, the guesswork comes into this, because something occurs. There's the edge of the pit, there's the lip of the pit, it goes straight down 60 feet or so. If you fall in it, you're pretty much dead. And this is something called, this trough against the back wall, which is actually this here. This trough against the back wall, and there's a picture of it, is called the River of Fire. And something happens, some cosmic event occurs that, for all intents and purposes, could be a solar flare, could be a kill shot, could be something that wipes out life on Earth. Now, this is science now. 14,400 years ago, there was a blast from the sun that created something called the Z-pinch. And the Z-pinch is when these coronal mass ejections come out of the sun, they hit the atmosphere, and then they come in through the holes, actually, from the top and the bottom in the Arctic and the Antarctic, and they come in through the top. And 14,400 years ago, wiped out most of life on Earth, killing everybody in humanity with the exception of about 2,000 people or so. And this is what the science says on this. Now, the Aboriginals in Australia have all kinds of cave art and all kinds of interesting things that actually show the effects of this Z-pinch, this coronal mass ejection, which was what Ed Dames would call a kill shot at that time. So is there the possibility that this kill shot happens again? Is there the possibility that another one of these strikes the Earth? Now, in the 1880s, we had a coronal mass ejection, which was called the Carrington event. And the Carrington event actually came in through the tops of the Van Allen radiation belts, the holes, if you will, and it fried our telegraph system in the West. It happened again in 1989, where it came in and blacked out most of Canada for actually for a pretty good while. Melted all their igloos, you folks in Canada. But at the top of the River of Fire, there's a point where the initiate can actually then meditate. This is my buddy Pete Carroll actually meditating. That's a hat, by the way, not a halo. It does make him a little bit look like Saint Pete Carroll. But he was doing a meditation at actually the top of this River of Fire. Now, let's go back to and let's go up now. So now we'll see. And is this event coming? Is it happening very soon? Is it between now and 2025, 2026? Have we managed to stop it? Is it somehow connected to Antarctica? And I think it might be. Now, the only reason I'm explaining this is because I've had experiences inside the pyramid. I went to school actually in Cairo, all the way back in 1974, 75. I took about 6 months off from high school. My stepdad, Frank Salomon, had a import-export business there. And he took me, so I got very much to play Johnny Quest while I was there. But let me give you the good news here. The good news is that there's a descending path for a mass of humanity that goes to the pit, that ultimately goes to global destruction or their destruction. But here, this upward path of the pyramid, it happens between about 1453 and about 1350 BC. Now, this is the period that we know of as Moses, the period of Akhenaten, the period of King Tut, and the last of, I guess you would call, the copper-skinned kings of Egypt. But, and also in the same period of time, between 1350 and about 1453 or so, in the same period of time, you also had the Hindu Vedas being written in India, supposedly by the elephant-headed god Ganesha. But an upward path of humanity begins to occur with the initiation of, again, the Hindu Vedas and a concept of monotheism. The Israelites then escaped from Egypt. Now, it's interesting that there's a huge block. There's a red granite pillar. It's about a 10-ton pillar that actually blocks the upward path, which also shows that without some kind of divine intervention, without some kind of help from God or the gods, that mankind would never actually head up this upward path. But one way or another, we do it, and we start the upward path of humanity. Now, it's interesting because as you go along this, there are influences, spiritual influences, and messianic figures that occur. About 600 BC, we get the first of our messianic figures. Now, you could talk about Moses, but we don't know if Moses was a composite character, if he was a group of people, or was actually a real guy. It never in the Old Testament actually names Moses. Moses just means from the reeds or the rushes, and it never actually names the Pharaoh that's responsible for the exodus from Egypt. But one way or another, the Israelites or the Hyksos actually escaped. And the first of the great messianic figures appears to be Buddha. But there's Buddha, there's Lao Tzu, there's Confucius, there's all these ancient Chinese masters, if you will, that come to us about 600 BC or so. Now, they introduce a concept of the chains of karma. They introduce a lot of spiritual concepts about, breaking free, but ultimately the concept that the Buddha offers is that God is ultimately within the self, that we can all become enlightened, and a piece of the greater story that we're all really the sons and daughters of God, and that each day we can experience this ennobling truth. Now, I don't want to sound like, Pat Robertson or Jack Van Impe or the preacher guy up here, but once again, it's as you move forward, to just make this story a little shorter, as you move forward, the central messianic figure, where the entire structure of the pyramid radiates out from, is a stone that's called the Christ stone or angle, that's approximately 3, 5, and 7, which stands for the way, which is the 5, the 7, which is the truth, and then the 3, 5, and 7, which is the way, the truth, and the life. Now, this messianic stone intimates or shows that a great Messiah, a Son of Man and Son of God, that a human being directly connecting with the oversoul of the Messiah, the messianic giant of Osiris, if you will come in approximately on September 27th, which makes him a Libra, which is why he's so great, September 27th of 2 BC. And whoever this is would then finish their mission on April 1st of 33 AD. Well, the remarkable timing of this is that we believe that Christ, or Yeshua, or Emmanuel ben Joseph, was born probably sometime between 7 and 5 BC. He has to be born at least before 5 because we know that Herod dies about 4 BC or so. So he has to be around and alive for maybe Herod to chase around for a while. But then his family goes to Egypt. And it's interesting because Jesus lives in Egypt. He goes to Alexandria. He grows up. He goes to high school. He plays soccer, whatever. Well, we know he's back in Jerusalem by the age of 12. But is it possible that he himself is actually initiated into the mysteries of the Great Pyramid? Because he talks about himself constantly. I am the I am the stone that the builders built. He talked about in reference to himself as far as the pyramid, that if I was to hush the crowd, the very stones would speak my name. Stones being a funerary monument, being the pyramid. So it is interesting that also on April 1st of 33 AD, we actually have physical evidence or historical evidence that year was actually Passover, was Maundy Thursday. That Passover was celebrated on the Thursday into Friday, which was the crucifixion. Now, one way or another, the sacrifice or crucifixion of Jesus then breaks the chains of karma, breaks the Buddhist chains, breaks everything else, and leads to a 2,000-year age, as you can see here in the Grand Gallery. It leaves with its 7 concourses. It leads to a 2,000-year age of freedom for the soul. That we've broken the bonds of incarnation or reincarnation over and over again. That now we're training with the angels, with the masters, with whomever else on other planets. So for 2,000 years, we get to just bounce around and do nothing but learn for the final exam, for the great test. Now, at the very end of this, you can actually see that there's a great step, and that now everybody that's ever lived now has to incarnate, which we call the Christians call it the resurrection of the quick and the dead. We call it universal reincarnation. And so universal reincarnation occurs, and the pyramid predicts it, that we would have about 7+ billion people on the planet for this final exam, for this this final great test at the end of the judgment age of Pisces, as we're moving slowly into the age of Aquarius. Now, the age of Aquarius, the actual age of Aquarius, doesn't actually begin until 2489 AD, when the sun actually rises on the solstice, when the sun actually rises on that particular day, on February 21st. Now, the other interesting part of this is that we're right now in a grand cusp, and astrologically speaking, cusps last about 5 days, where the sun is transitioning from one sign into another. Grand cusp lasts 2,000 years, which means a grand cusp lasts about 500 years. And the beginning of the grand cusp started approximately right at the top of the great step at 1900, and then moves forward. Now, as we're moving forward with this, you have to then crouch down at World War I. You can stand up for a period of time and then crouch down again at the Second World War. But it describes the First World War, the Second World War, the beginning of the collapse of Western civilization, and all through this, then the building material in the pyramid changes. On February 21st of 1999, as you enter the foyer of the King's Chamber, it all changes into red granite. And so all the temples in Egypt, they go from sandstone, which is like the mass or the mob. They then go to granite, which represents the lay people or the vicars or the people that help the priests. And then it goes to the Holy of Holies, which is red granite, which has a high quartz content. Of course, quartz contains gold, et cetera, et cetera. So the interesting part about this is that then at the end of this, and like I said, I just want to make this brief because we've got a lot to go through here. But in approximately 2034, now remember, there's going to be great death, great destruction, a lot of wars, a lot of, I'm not going to go into all of that specifically, but I have more for you at the end of the presentation as far as some very specific dates that are happening. But in 2034, there's something called the Day of Appearance. What I've seen astrally traveling there, or what I've seen using remote viewing, is that there are a series of wars and conflicts, first against Islam, then against China, actually then against Russia and Germany, then against China, and then a meteor strikes the planet in somewhere around 2028 AD. And for 7 years or so, the planet is literally reeling like a drunken man. And this can be described in the prophecies of Isaiah, and the prophecies, the war with Russia and Germany, actually being described in Ezekiel 38 and 39 biblically. But once again, I don't want to sound like Jack Van Impe here, quoting all the biblical prophecy of this. But the bottom line is that the earth is wobbling. We're in a lot of trouble, and what I see is that every ship, every saucer in this quadrant of the galaxy appears for one day, and they clean the atmosphere, move the earth back to where it's supposed to be, and then just disappear. Now, this also then leads to the coming of this symbol, which is the rising sun of consciousness, which is the rainbow, which is the bread of life. And this is the only hieroglyph, by the way, in all the pyramids. And what this hieroglyph means is the coming of the Messianic figure on October 31st, which is Halloween again, of 2039. Now, the interesting thing about that is that we celebrate Halloween as a resurrection of the dead, as honoring those dead souls. So what does it mean? It means, once again, that those who now are worthy, and those who deserve to be on this planet, and those who are going to come back are going to begin to then reincarnate. Now, the pyramid then points to, and what I've seen actually, and this is my personal opinion, is I see a female messianic figure called the Emmanuella, who actually incarnates. She comes in about 2034, so she's about 6 years old by 2039, and she's just recognized as the greatest soul on the planet, performing miracles, finding Atlantean technology, doing all kinds of things with reconstructing mass, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what does all this have to do with Antarctica? Okay, here we go. So what's happening now in Antarctica is interesting. We only discovered Antarctica in the 1840s, but the maps of the ancient sea kings, let me see if I can do this. The maps of the ancient sea kings, going all the way back to many thousands of years ago, not only knew that Antarctica was there, but actually in these maps described Antarctica at one point as an ice-free region as well. So once we discovered Antarctica, we started various explorations. And of course, here it is from space, here it is from the air. Antarctica even has it's not a nation, mind you. As a matter of fact, supposedly, nobody lives at the center of Antarctica, but there are military bases and scientific research bases by all the allies, by the Americans, by the French, by the of course the Russians, the English. So we've built all these things sort of surrounding anything that's in the center. And of course, this is the oak leaves of the United Nations flag. This is the aurora borealis, and energy coming out from the center of Antarctica, actually filmed by the International Space Station from space. Now, this is where it gets more interesting. Adolf Hitler was concerned about his legacy, if you will, and Adolf Hitler maybe had a great plan, or whoever was behind the Germans had a great plan of establishing a fourth Reich, and that this Fourth Reich was going to be probably carry on in South America, but possibly Antarctica. Now, Hitler also said that, and we don't quite know if it was Hitler at the end of the war. There's evidence that he may have escaped as early as late 1943 into 1944. And that there were taped instructions, or that doubles had actually taken his place. But the biggest thing is that they're concerned about forming a Fourth Reich. BMW Messerschmitt had factories in Brazil that were 10 times larger than anything that Germany had. So they had spread their economic might and power primarily through South America, because in South America, the South Americans liked the Germans. They had treaties with the Germans. The Germans always did what they said they were going to do. Unlike the gringos in El Norte that just made a bunch of promises. and never actually performed on what they said. So in 1934 and 35, with an eye towards again building a Fourth Reich, with an eye towards again making sure that Hitler's dream didn't die, the Germans sent expeditions to Antarctica. Now, it's interesting because if you look at the alignments that we have here with the with the rotational axis of the Earth, the dead center of Antarctica, and then you look at where the German expeditions actually were, the Nazi expeditions, Nazi German expeditions. So they did massive expeditions where they flew over this area, they dropped German flags to claim it again for the for the Third Reich, and they did this in 1934 and 1935. Excuse me. Did this in 1934 and 1935, claiming it as New Schwabenland, and that New Schwabenland was going to be, once again, a place that was going to belong to Germany. You know, and of course, when the Germans, they say, lost the war, or did they? Did they simply establish the Fourth Reich as the government of the United States? But that's neither here nor there. So here are the Germans. There was a massive operation of them going down there. It was huge explorations. Here's just 3 Germans there and this is an example of the Nazi flags that they dropped all across Antarctica with flares and markers and whatever else to be able to map basically New Schwabenland as their territory, and they even called their base New Berlin while they were there with New Schwabenland. Now the question then becomes whether or not the Germans and their flight to South America, to Brazil, to Patagonia, to Argentina, all these places, did the Germans actually develop super technology? And was this super technology based on implosion drives like Victor von Schauberger? Was it based on anti-gravity as well? So when the United States and Russia captured these German scientists at Peenemünde, and the Russians took half of them, and the United States took the other half with Wernher von Braun, but were they just the stupid ones? Were they the ones? They were the ones that were working on V2 rockets, and that was rocket technology, as opposed to non-chemical drives like flying saucers that could possibly go to the moon or to the stars. Wernher von Braun always saw the rocket program as a way to eventually colonize Mars, and wouldn't that be the ultimate Third Reich area to go? So, but there was for about 5 years after the war, there was a smash and grab war between the United States and Russia, where we were all raiding these top secret sites to try to see if we could get technology. When we conquered Nazi Germany, and by the way, the Germans were never allowed to surrender. They never signed a peace treaty. They never signed a treaty of surrender like the Japanese did, where not only do we allow the Japanese to surrender honorably, but we even let them keep their emperor. You can imagine what would have happened if we'd gone into Germany, allowed them to sign honorably, and allowed them to keep, I don't know, Hitler as their leader. So we absorbed Germany and made it basically a subsidiary S corp of the United States. So, but when we got them, and this was the thing that there you are. Oh, thank you. Wait, I forgot these. Thanks for bringing them back. Here we go, sweetie. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me. I'll talk about these. I'll talk about these in just a second. When we conquered Germany, Eisenhower made a comment that if we'd waited 6 more months, that the Germans would have won the war. Now, that also means that the Germans probably developed the atomic bomb. Matter of fact, we didn't develop until we captured the German scientists. And with their V2 rockets or whatever else they had to, they could probably have attacked New York, London, could have caused massive destruction. So we had to completely rewrite our technical manuals. We had to add over 750,000 new words for things that they invented. All I can tell you is that the massive leap in our technology and evolution due to the Germans after the war. I mean, they invented every airplane design you can think of, the YF-22 fighter, the Flapjack, the F-117A, 747s, supersonic transports, all designs by the Germans. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, radar-resistant paint, jet packs, which they called Himmelstormers, sound guns, light guns, certain types of laser technology, implosion drives, which were developed by Victor von Schauberger, that claimed that they could actually have these ships going at saucer-shaped disks with implosion drives going at 40,000 miles an hour. Matter of fact, von Schauberger claimed that implosion was the true power of the universe, and that internal combustion engines, which acted off explosions, were, for all intents and purposes, demonic, that they were infernal. And he claimed that Hitler agreed with him, and that Hitler started out as a vegetarian, as a person that believed in ecology and whatever else. And Schauberger was the one that said Hitler changed, and that he became more and more demonic, and all these things, whether you believe in that or not. But we had to rewrite our technical manuals, and the Germans left. Now the question then becomes, there were 9 bases that were dealing in anti-gravity, that were dealing with these type of drives, that Lieutenant Colonel Wendell Stevens gave locations of these bases that were all rated. Where did they go? And there was a huge fight between the Russians and the United States, because we thought the Russians had the super science guys. The Russians thought we had the super science guys, and nobody really knows where they went. Okay, with a quick break in this, I just want to show you. I've already showed these shows these up there, so and I don't want to make this a sales pitch, but here are my books. Once again, rated 5-star by Amazon.com. We have thousands of people. The books sell out, so right now the books are in print. As a matter of fact, the original hard copy, which was these 2 books actually in print, is now selling. I'm not kidding. You can look it up. It's selling for almost $2,800 on eBay and on Amazon. So don't be discouraged if you find that book, which sells for all that money. We do have the paperbacks. These 2 are the same book. These are part 1 and part 2, and then this is a separate story that takes place about 8 years later. But you need to hang on for the entire ride, because this book, and if everything goes well, I have book 4 in the works, unless the government stops me. And again, I was told that if I came out with this material, I was told that they would stop at nothing to get me. That they would stop at nothing to make sure that I was shut up and I was basically put away. So just remember that when you hear all these bad things and people talking bad stuff and whatever else. So I want to say thank you very much for these. I'm just going to put these over here for the time being. It's sort of out of shot. All right, so here we go. And what does all this have to do with Antarctica? Well, it has everything to do with Antarctica, because is there the possibility that the Germans, who claimed the place as New Schwabenland as a territory of Germany in 2034 and 2035, did they go there? Did they find an ice-free region or a moderate region, or did they go under it? Did they, with their submarines, did they journey to the middle? Did they use their flying saucer craft as well at that time? Now, here's what's interesting, is that after the war, there's all kinds of evidence of these ships. Now, this Henge, as it's called, the speculation is that they would actually take the flying craft, the Haunebu or the Vril, and they would actually sit them in these henges, and then at the bottom they had this device that they called the Die Glocke, also known as the Nazi bell. And it was believed that Dr. Hans Kammler, who became basically the Obergruppenführer, the second most powerful man in Europe with almost 14 million people underneath him, he was the one that also designed the concentration camps and did all kinds of nasty things. He was a particularly nasty piece of work. But that Kammler found a crashed flying saucer, an alien flying saucer or an interdimensional saucer in the Black Forest, and that he took the engine out of it, and that Glocke was then chained at the center of this, and they could turn it on, and it would then create a field where, when they actually floated a Haunebu or Vril UFO craft above it, that it would actually then open a door or a gate that would then allow the ship to travel to Aldebaran. Now, if you go back into this, there's a woman by the name of Maria Orsic. I'm not going to go too much into this, but a woman by the name of Maria Orsic, who was a psychic and sensitive who came from Zagreb. And she had a group of women which were called the Vril Damen. And the Vril Damen were amazingly beautiful girls. They grew their hair down to their knees and ankles. They channeled supposedly naked, which was, of course, one of the interesting things about being in the Third Reich. But Rudolf Hess, who was Hitler's best buddy, was a huge fan of Maria Zagreb and the girls. And was using Maria to channel a spiritual mentor to them named Eckhart. And what happened is that one night, Maria said, well, there's another spirit that wants to come in. And then they began speaking to beings supposedly from Aldebaran. Or actually the Sumi is what they were called. And they claimed that they were actually the Sumerians, that they had originally colonized Earth something like 500 million years ago. And that now they were back and that they were going to give us technology. And a lot of people believe that from these salons that scientists started coming and Maria started writing things in Sumerian cuneiform, but that they basically got a download of extraterrestrial technology to be able to develop all this new stuff. Now, these photographs taken after the war, directly after the war and all the way through the 60s, even this one here, this is a famous shot which was part of an 8mm film that was taken by Madeline Rutherford and George Adamski in Madeline's front yard in Silver Springs, Maryland in 1964, I believe it was. Adamski died of pneumonia actually only a few months later, but it's remarkable that this particular ship or craft looks remarkably like stuff that was actually being designed and built by BMW Messerschmitt at that time at some point in the 1930s. And this is a cutaway diagram that appeared in some of George Adamski's books. Now remember, Adamski was a best-selling author. He met Kennedy, he met the Pope. He's sort of the grandfather of the UFO movement. And he was contacting a Nordic being called Orthon. And he was riding in these ships. Well, the ships, as opposed to being extraterrestrial technology, had mercury drives, had anti-gravitic engines, north and south. And this is all stuff that Adamski claimed that these beings came from Venus and Mars and moons of Saturn and Jupiter, but look remarkably like stuff that were actually designed by the Germans in the 1930s. All right, excuse me just a second. I should probably have a glass as opposed to something, but Ice Age, it's the best. All right, so there you go. All right, how am I doing? You guys okay out there? Everybody all right? You guys all right on the internet? Once again, thank you for joining us on liverevelations.com. That's liverevelations.com. We decided to do this for free today, that you can tune in, because I think that people's better natures, I think that people donating, I think people are far more generous than when you actually charge them money to do something. I'm a big believer in passing around the hat and people matching energy. Once again, if you have love in your heart, the things you love, you put your energy towards, and money is a form of love. It's a form of that energy. If you like U2, you buy their albums, you go to their concerts, you do whatever. If you appreciate this information, if you appreciate what I've done throughout my life, which has been nothing but dedicated to information. I've tried to be kind. I've tried to put people together. I can never understand. I mean, it really are dark forces that generate this vitriol on the internet that I can't understand. I guess people just like being mad and angry. But once again, we're doing this as a fundraiser. LiveRevelations.com. It's to help myself with my legal battles, my legal fight, but most of all to help my darling wife Melissa, who's having all kinds of medical challenges and problems, and help with medical bills and legal costs. So we have a suggested donation of $20, but once again, I'm asking you if you could dig deep down in your pockets. And once again, we show our true selves when we have people who need our help are placed in front of us. And St. Paul used to say that you help those that are placed in your path. And so once again, I'm hoping to place myself in your path. I'm hoping to place myself at your mercy and place myself actually in a shroud of your love and your affection. And once again, for those of you that just want to see it for free, and that's fine too, but once again, a suggested donation of $20 is great, but anything else that you can. We have to pay for the studio today. I have to thank Ron for his fantastic organization in putting all this together for us so that I could be here to talk to you live, which may or may not be a swan song for me. We'll see what happens next week. Okay, so just so you know, we good? Everything fine? All the technical stuff happening? We're all good? Double thumbs up? Okay. All right. This is Admiral Byrd. And Admiral Byrd, known as, I guess, the Arctic explorer. And everybody thinks that Admiral Byrd got there first. Nobody wants to tell you that the Germans and the Nazis were actually there way before everybody, and that they actually had claimed the continent. You can still find actual copies of National Geographic. Anybody, I know in my house, we had a whole part of our library where we had just like 100 National Geographics, and my dad used to subscribe to them, and we would put them in the library, so we refer to them later. But the older National Geographic magazines actually refer to Antarctica as New Schwabenland. They recognized the German claim, or did recognize it, which just kind of disappeared after the war, strangely enough. So where's Admiral Byrd? Now, Admiral Byrd had actually flown over Antarctica, and that was his first big achievement, actually flying over it in 1927. And then he did his expedition to Antarctica in 1935. Now remember, the Germans went there in 34 and 35. He showed up a few months later with his expedition at that time. And of course, here's some photographs of the Byrd expedition there. These are now it is interesting because when Byrd went back on his second expedition in 1947, some very strange things were going on. Now, Byrd went with 1,500 men. He went with an original version of what we would call an aircraft carrier. He went with planes. He met with tractors. He basically met with tanks. He went with an armed force to Antarctica. A newspaper in Chile had actually asked him, why all these men? Why the armed force? Why are you taking an army on a scientific expedition? 1,500 men with equipment, with planes, with tanks, with guns, the entire deal. And Byrd made a mysterious comment where he said, it's in case we meet the enemy across the ice. The Chilean newspaper then said, what enemy? The war's been over now for a couple of years, and who is it you're expecting to meet? And Byrd got very flustered and said, well, no comment. So by showing up in Antarctica with this force, if you will, with this military force there, all armed to the teeth, they're actually unloading not only the mush dogs, but also one of the planes that they used at that time. Now, here's another. This is more boats that were actually being used. This kind of funky looking plane that he also used as well. There's the trucks. There's all the trucks and everything else. And this is the Byrd Arctic Expedition. This is the postage stamp. Remember when you could send all postage for 3 cents before they actually created the United States Postal Service, the corporation, in 1971? But that's another story. So here it is. It actually shows his sorry, it was 1928. I think I was wrong, but it actually shows his flight, the 1928 flight of him going over actually the North Pole. I'm sorry, and then he actually flew over the North Pole. First one to fly over the North Pole. Then he flew over the South Pole, and this is the what they call Little Antarctica. But oh, sorry, I'm doing it on that. But here's his South Pole expedition. Here's his North Pole expedition as well. So here's all the stuff. Here's all the all the equipment. Here's all the military guys. He brought his dog, and the dog is who I feel the most sorry for. But the dog is not a mush dog. It's not a husky. It doesn't have a big coat. And Admiral Byrd brought his dog, and I hope the dog got to stay on the ship, and I hope the dog, bless you, and I hope the dog was nice and warm. Did I not put his pictures in here? Wait a minute. No, come on. I put all kinds of pictures of his dog in here. Oh well. Had another picture of his dog barking at a penguin, which I thought was funny, and another picture of his dog wearing a little coat. So at least he got to wear a little coat, and hopefully stay on the ship and not suffer the deprivations of Admiral Byrd. We good on the camera?
Yep.
All right, everything fine?
Next time you hit a break, the picture goes one more time.
Okay.
Up a little higher,
All right.
cut off the covers and you're...
Okay, well, we're just about there. We're just about at a little break here. I just want to tell people that once again, if you want to know why the government's after me, if you want to know why and I told you that this was going to happen, but right here, okay, right there. All right, this is Sands of Time Volume 1. Sands of Time Volume 1, a stunning epic. It's the true story of Dr. Ted Humphrey and his journey through the black world of secret technology, Montauk Project, Area 51, the Dulce War 1 and 2, the extraterrestrial agenda, and eventually the invention and creation of man-portable time travel devices. So this is Book 1, and as an extension of Book 1, this is Book 2. And Book 1 and 2 are basically the same book, just split in half. Originally they were a hardcover limited edition, which is now going on, as I said, eBay and Amazon for about $2,800. You could probably get one for about $600 or so. So if you have the original hardcover edition, Either hang on to it because it'll get more valuable, or I don't know, sell it and pay your rent, one of the two. Then the third book takes place, it is a standalone novel, but it takes place about 8 years after the events in Sands of Time. It's also Dr. Ted Humphrey with his wife Irina and his 2 children, who once again are now faced with an extraterrestrial threat. Isomer Protocol stands for the Isolation Memorandum. And we discovered that Dr. George Bellamy, who used to run the program before he committed suicide, and you've seen photos of this guy. There's a lot of people that are sending me stuff of him, but that he agreed to sign a treaty with a group of extraterrestrials that actually isolates us to Earth. And when they find out that we're basically chafing under that under that treaty, it's what happens and what it is they're going to do to us, and the machinations of what's happening, and how we eventually gain our right to be able to travel through time and space. Okay, I don't know if you guys want to take a quick break or not, or I'm okay. I'm going to take a drink of water. I don't know if you guys are going to turn the cameras off, but. Well, I'm ready. If these guys just want to get finished. Hi, welcome back, everybody. Once again, welcome to welcome to our show. Welcome to live presentations. Is that where we're at now? Livepresentations.com, the Antarctic, and now we're getting to it. So this is Admiral Byrd as well, and thank you. In the break, I actually got to find that there's Admiral Byrd's dog, and I just wanted to put the animals in there. Again, he's not a mush dog. He's not a husky. Really, would you take this kind of dog to Antarctica with you? At least they gave him a little sweater, but you can actually see that his paws are really cold. And I think one of the great moments of the expedition, even more so than Admiral Byrd possibly getting his planes knocked down by Nazis, is when his dog, and I don't know the dog's name. I wish I did. Met a penguin and decided he did not like penguins at all. So he's there barking at the penguin. Which is good fun. Now, Admiral Byrd's expedition was somewhat disastrous, the one in 1947, because he lost planes, he had crashes, he lost men, and the rumor is that there was a running gunfight or gun battle or something with someone down there. Now, so let's just, and moving forward, did he go down there to find that the possibilities of the Germans had actually created either an underground base or facility in a zone at the center of Antarctica that they claim is ice-free or at least fairly temperate or moderate? And did he get his butt kicked while he was down there? Now, highlights of the Byrd Antarctic expeditions by Richard E. Byrd were written not only, well, he wrote books about his flight over the North Pole, he wrote books about his flight over the South Pole, he wrote books about his first expedition down there, but was there a cover-up when it came to the expedition of 1947? Now, in this book, which was actually published in July of 1952, Byrd made a few outrageous statements in this book, and he was interviewed for the book by the newspapers in Washington, D.C., and at not only a press conference, but him talking to reporters and promoting his book about his Antarctic expedition, they asked him what should be done with Antarctica. And he said, we should test hydrogen bombs there or nuclear weapons. Kind of outrageous when you consider that it would possibly melt the polar ice caps and cause massive catastrophe. Now, was there an unexpected consequence to this? Was there something where, once again, Admiral Byrd making a statement about testing nuclear weapons in Antarctica or making it a zone where we should test these bombs and melt the ice cap? What would you think if you were a group of Germans that had hyper advanced technology, that had actually moved to the center part of Antarctica, that had actually already gotten poked in the eye by Admiral Byrd and his military gang down there? Well, the next day, after he made these comments, when the book came out, this happened in July of 1952. For a few days, not just one night, you had fleets of flying saucers, these glowing flying saucers, began flying over not just Washington, D.C., but over sections of the East Coast, where they were flying in what was described as typical Luftwaffe formation. Typical Luftwaffe formation. And these photos, these are the verifications that were done by the government. They took individual photos of each of these ships. You can see actually at the top here where they actually describe the different shapes and different designs of these craft when they actually blew them up here at the bottom. And once again, these are military verifications and reports. That's case number 7, 1920, 1952. And all of these photos of these fleets of ships. Now, it's funny because how many people who debunk UFOs say, well, why doesn't a UFO just land in the White House lawn? Well, here, they literally almost did. So here you have all the photos of all of these ships or craft. 7 years later, actually on July 19th through the 27th, 1952, a host of unfriendly gray aliens flew over Washington, D.C. They don't know that. They don't know if it's unfriendly gray aliens or it's maybe blonde Nordics or if it's actually the Fourth Reich. So it did not focus itself just on Washington, D.C. These are photos from at approximately the same time taken by the Coast Guard in Salem, Massachusetts. So it wasn't just limited to D.C. It was limited to the entire East Coast of the United States, which maybe just showed how easy it was for them to do anything they wanted. They could roll over in their sleep and wipe us out. There was nothing we could do. Our planes chased them. They just outran us. And so this became and I think it's a direct effect, if you go back to it, to the comments of Admiral Byrd saying, well, we're gonna use Antarctica as a nuclear dump, as a place to test nuclear weapons, which probably pissed off whoever actually lived down there. And I'm not sure if I was the first person to connect these two things together. All right, moving to the next step. Now we've discovered in Antarctica that not only was there civilization, but there are pyramids there, pyramids that rival the Great Pyramid of Giza in size. Matter of fact, some of these pyramids are something like 4 times the size, about 1,600 feet tall, 4 times bigger than the Great Pyramids themselves. Now, going back to the maps of the ancient sea kings, was there a time when Antarctica was ice-free? Was there a civilization there? Was it a colony of Atlantis? Did they have hyper-technology of some kind? Well, now, as we're moving forward, now the United States has not only found that there's civilizations and pyramids there, but we've actually put bases there as well. So here's the location of the of where some of these pyramids are. I'm sure it's not too clear, but this is where locations of the pyramids are, where the United States now has bases actually right near these new pyramid complexes that they found. Now, it certainly would have been much easier for, if Antarctica was ice-free, however many thousands of years ago, to put pyramids there. It would probably make sense if you were stabilizing land mass. As I told you, that the theory is that in the book of Enoch, that Enoch is working on a global level with either the Nephilim or the Anunnaki to build baffles of pyramids all across the planet. And of course, the main pyramid being possibly the pyramid of the pyramid in Giza. And by the way, the Giza pyramid, even though there's evidence that that pyramid was built about 12,500 BC, that the inner core, which is the prophecy part that I'm telling you about, that inner core prophecy section of it is much older than the outer structure. So it's a good possibility that the pyramid has been rebuilt over that structure maybe a couple of times. We do know that the pharaoh Khufu, in the period of time that they claim that it was built, that all Khufu did really was redecorate the pyramid, that with 20,000 men working seasonally, I might add, over the course of his reign of about 36 years or so, that they may have actually just replaced the outer casing, the limestone outer casing, and all of the artwork. There was beautiful artwork on the outside of the pyramid at one time. So here's the area of exploration of where all the bases are. Now, all of these pyramids all across the continent, these are not mountains, these are actual pyramids. But once again, how long has it been there? Were they actually marked on the maps of the ancient sea kings? But we have pyramids of Antarctica, and the United States seems very interested in what's going on there. And we have government officials, and quite possibly we've had John Kerry, Buzz Aldrin, all these people going down there, and with the possibility that Barack Obama actually snuck down there when he was actually visiting Patagonia and Argentina. So here are all the pyramid structures, or groups of the pyramid structures, that we're in the process of exploring, building bases around. Now this photo, and I'm sorry it's not clear for you on the TV, But this is the theory of a cutaway of a massive series of underground bases that we believe were actually built by the German army or by the Germans when they actually got there with their, whatever their super technology is. So here you have the actual design of the base, the entrances of the base, how far underneath and underground they go. And we can only speculate how many people are living there. Is it a whole civilization? Are there 5, or are there 10, or are there 20,000 or so? We just don't know. So, and here's a really clear shot of what appears as though to be a Giza-type pyramid complex as the storm clears, with men actually, actually coming up to the pyramids, actually coming out of the mist. All right, so here we go. When Hitler made a statement where he said, and this was towards the end of the war, this was late 43. We still don't know if it was really Hitler or if he'd escaped by that time. But he said, in the final battle between East and West, my last battalion will be there to tip the scale. What does he mean by that? And where is the last battalion? Would the last battalion be in Brazil? Would it be in Antarctica? Would it be wherever? Now, the interesting part about this is that this is an artist rendition of Earth's magnetosphere and NASA's 4 MMS satellites. It's an image from the University of Maryland. And the magnetosphere protects us from the cosmic winds. Well, it doesn't just protect us from the cosmic winds, it protects us from electrons that are moving at the speed of light from ripping into our planet. Now, this is where this gets interesting, and this is where the rubber really meets the road here. The Daily Mail reported that Earth is being protected by a Star Trek-style invisible shield. Scientists probe mysterious barrier blocking killer electrons. These killer electrons whip around the planet at near light speed. If they hit Earth, they could knock out power grids and change our climate. The shield was found 7,200 miles, or 11,600 kilometers, above Earth in the Van Allen radiation belts. Scientists are baffled as to how the shield formed and how it works. And it's almost like these electrons are running into a glass wall, said Professor Daniel Baker from the University of Colorado Boulder. An invisible shield some 7,200 miles above Earth has been found blocking killer electrons. These electrons whip around the planet. If they hit Earth on a large scale, they could knock out power grids, as I just said. But this shield is like a brick wall that protects the planet. And there was a coronal mass ejection about 2 years ago that was actually going to come in to the top and the bottom part of this. And not only did it hit the wall, but it was like a fist actually came and went boom, 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 and actually shot this CME out from the hole. Now, the shield discovered in the Van Allen belts is 2 donut-shaped rings above the Earth that are filled with high-energy electrons and protons. Now, last year, Professor Baker led a team that used the twin Van Allen probes launched in 2012 to discover a third, what he called transient storage ring. And the ring is located between the inner and outer Van Allen radiation belts and seems to come and go with the intensity of space weather. So it's literally when there's a coronal mass ejection or a massive cosmic wind, it's like somebody flips a switch and this shield comes on to actually protect the Earth. The ring appears to block ultra-fast electrons from breaching the shield and moving deeper towards the Earth's atmosphere. It's almost like these electrons are running into a glass wall in space, said Baker. It's an extremely puzzling phenomenon. Now, the team originally thought the highly charged electrons, which are looping around the Earth at more than 100,000 miles per second, would slowly drift downward into the upper atmosphere. But the impenetrable barrier seen by the twin Van Allen belt spacecraft stops the electrons before they get that far, said Professor Baker. The group looked at a number of scenarios that could create and maintain such a barrier, and the team wondered if it might have to do with Earth's magnetic field lines. And these lines trap and control protons and electrons, bouncing them between Earth's pole like beads on a string. Now, held in place they claim, by Earth's magnetic field, the Van Allen radiation belts swell and shrink in response to incoming energy disturbances from the sun. Once again, sound like somebody flipping a switch. Somewhat like the shields created by force fields on Star Trek that were used to repel alien weapons, we're seeing an invisible shield blocking these electrons, said Professor Daniel Baker. Killer electrons whip around the planet at near light speed and have been known to threaten astronauts, fry satellites, and degrade space systems during intense solar storms. And also, apparently, with coronal mass ejections that are coming in through the top and the bottom. Not only does the shield do this, but something comes up from the center of the core of the Earth that actually drives these, that actually acts as a shield against these CMEs. So, okay, we're going to take a big jump here, and we're going to take a big cut and a big break. I want you to stay with me on this. This is where the political and international intrigue part of the story gets really crazy. So let me take you now to the holy city of Mecca. This is a photo of construction being done at Islam's holiest site, which is the Great Mosque, also known as the Kaaba, in Mecca. Let me give you some history here. Mecca was the position of what's known as the Zamzam well. And the Zamzam well appeared supposedly at the behest of the Archangel Gabriel when Hagar, who was the handmaiden of Sarah, made love to Abraham because Sarah was too old to have children. So she said, "Come into my handmaiden," hence the book and the TV show, The Handmaid's Tale and all that. So Hagar had a bright, powerful, beautiful son named Ishmael. Well, then the angel appeared to Sarah, actually appeared to Abraham, and said, well, we're going to work it so that Sarah can have a child. And Sarah was apparently listening in at the tent when the angels were there, and she laughs. And Abraham gets all mad. He says, how dare you disrespect the angels? That's why it's kind of funny, because when Isaac was born, it actually means the laugh, or to joke. And so so in this, because Hagar gets a little full of herself, Sarah insists that she be driven away. And so she gets driven into the desert. She's going to die. The Archangel Gabriel appears, and he makes a well appear, the Zamzam well, and she survives. Well, that spot is now the current location of Mecca. By the time Muhammad came along in 600 or so, 640, about halfway through the 7th century, Muhammad was destroying every idol that he could get his hands on. He did not believe in any graven image, not images of God, not images of him, images of nobody. No more family portraits, no more drawings of human beings, nobody. So he was a crusader, if you will, against every form of idol, saying that only Allah should be worshipped as maybe a form of energy. So it gets kind of strange because the Zamzam well at Mecca had become a repository for every god that was out there. If anybody had a god or a statue or what have you, they all brought it there. So Muhammad shows up, and he shows up and says, no, this is all idolatrous, and he's smashing everything. And then suddenly he comes to the Kaaba stone, which looks to be like a giant piece of black meteorite. And it beams a frequency of energy into his head that I guess you would call religious ecstasy, if you will. And Muhammad goes crazy for this and says, well, this is something, and were these leftover Atlantean supercomputers, as John Keel actually told us in his book, Why UFOs, or Disneyland for the Gods. And so he was so overwhelmed and so impressed with this, and there had already been hajjs and trips and journeys. So the worship of this area had already been going on for 1,000 years. So Muhammad decides to make it a religion that's completely anti-idolatry. Makes it all about this one particular idol. So now you got to pray to it 5 times a day. You have to, at some point in your life, go on a hajj or journey to it. You got to touch it. If you go twice, you get a special green turban, or you get a blue turban, I think. Green turban means you've gone once. Blue turban means you've gone twice. So he makes his entire religion about the worship of this particular stone. And as I said, any relic that you had, you usually came and you put it somewhere where it could be protected by the priests and what have you. Now, they're doing about $1 billion worth of construction to completely redesign Mecca. It's very controversial, by the way. All this reconstruction at Mecca. But then something really weird happens. All right. Muhammad goes to heaven a couple of times, he claims. The first time he goes, he's in a cave, he comes back, he starts mumbling a lot of crazy stuff to these 4 buddies of his, and which then later becomes the Quran. He goes to heaven a second time, and he claims that he brings back with him in his mind a manuscript for a book which is called The Alienation of the Rose, which is also known as the Book of Truth. However, he'd had interactions, he claims, with the Archangel Gabriel. Now you can move forward to the Billy Meyer case because Billy Meyer claims that Gabriel was a Pleiadian and whatever else. But one of the things that Muhammad took away from his encounter with the Archangel Gabriel, and if you want to close up on this, is that there was a contents of an ancient manuscript which is called Gabriel's Instructions to Muhammad. And it centers around a group of instructions given to Muhammad by the angel Gabriel in a cave called Hira, located on the mountain called Jabal An-Nur near Mecca, wherein this heavenly being entrusted unto Muhammad's care a box or an ark of immense power. He was forbidden to use it as it belonged to God only and was instead to be buried in a shrine at the place of worship the angels used before the creation of man, which is, again, what they believe, Mecca, until its future uncovering in the days of Yom al-Qiyamah, or Qiyamah, which means literally the day of resurrection. Okay, are we in the resurrection age? Are people going to be resurrected? If you take the pyramids' word for it, the Great Pyramid of Giza, we're actually in a resurrection age. It's the resurrection of the quick and the dead. It's the infusement of the spiritos of Christ. It's the veil finally being lifted from the right side of the brain after 2012 that's talked about by the Maya. So one way or another, Muhammad takes the Ark of Gabriel, this box, and puts it somewhere in Mecca. So is there the possibility, and this is what I speculate and hypothecate that during this construction, going deeper down to build everything from more parking lots to more causeways to more whatever else, I think they found it. And not only did they find it, but on September 12th of last year, there are massive plasma emissions over the Grand Mosque. And these plasma emissions, not just one, I want you to remember the very last scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. If you remember the last scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, remember when Marion and Indy are tied to the post and he's saying, "Don't look, Marion, don't look," and the angel comes towards, remember when the angel came towards the screen and it starts going, it starts eating everybody. And of course it wipes out the Nazis and the one guy gets all the flesh gets burned off him. I think that when they opened the Ark of Gabriel, this happened, this massive plasma storm, this crazy plasma storm, and it kills 4,000 people. Well, how do you explain that you found a mystic box that let loose with a natural catastrophe from God that killed 4,000 people? So they came up with this idea that these people have been trampled to death. So a photo of that, these people don't look trampled to me. These people look like, I don't know what they look like, but they certainly don't look like they've been trampled to death. There's no footprints. There's nobody smushed. There's no blood all over everywhere. So anyway, now this is where it gets even stranger. The Saudi Arabians, and let's talk about the Crusades for a second. The Crusader Knights that caused all this trouble, this is about, and by the way, the Book of Truth, or the Alienation of the Rose, the book disappears about 1195 AD. And that's when things go really bad for the Muslims. That's when the Crusades begin to happen. But the Crusaders, who were tasked by the Pope to just start killing everybody they get their hands on and just create all kinds of, basically start a war with Islam, they weren't just killing Saracens. They weren't just killing Muslims. They were also killing Russian Orthodox. They were killing Greek Orthodox. But it was the Russian Orthodox particularly that the Catholic Church had a real problem with. When Jacques de Molay, who was head of the Templars at that time, and the Templars were actually declared heretics, all because they were actually drinking a hallucinogenic substance out of what was believed to be the skull of John the Baptist, which is, by the way, when they were exiled, they took everything they had, put it on ships, and therefore became basically pirates, which is where the Jolly Roger comes from. That's supposed to be the head and the thigh bones of John the Baptist on the Black Field, which later became the flag of a pirate named Rockham. If you watch Black Sails, which was one of the greatest shows ever on TV, that became his. He was the one with Anne Bonny, and she had her lover and whatever else. But so the point with this is that the Templars, 1,000 of them fled to Russia, and 1,000 of them, these were the non-violent Templars. These are what they called the White Cross Templars, but they were being persecuted as well. The White Cross Templars fled to Russia, 1,000 of them, and they were protected by Tsar Paul. And as a matter of fact, I belong to the order of the Knights of St. John, which is basically, to once again help the sick and help people and just do good in the world. So for those of you who have actually seen me in the St. John cape with a sword and all that, oh, he belongs to the Illuminati and all that stuff, it's just nonsense. Not a Mason. I guess I would be considered a White Cross Templar. But the Knights of St. John were primarily, the Hospitaliers were primarily a medical corps. For those of you, by the way, that are fans of Doctor Who, when Doctor Who started with Matt Smith and Stephen Moffat took over, they actually put the symbol of the Knights of St. John actually on the front of the TARDIS, which just overjoyed me, to no end. So the Templars not only wiped out Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox, right along with the Muslims, they burned 15,000 Knights of Templar at the stake. This is actually an event that was actually predicted in the Bible by the book of Daniel. So the Saudi Arabians don't know what to do with this box. They don't know how to open it. They don't know how to do anything with it. And they go to the Russians to come up with some way to work this thing. What is it? What's it supposed to be? Is it supposed to be used in the last days somehow? So they approach the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, Kirill. Now, let me remind you that Kirill, the patriarch of the church, is close friends with Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin had been a devout Russian Orthodox Christian even when he was running the KGB. So you'd have to understand what a spy master Putin would have to be or how sneaky he'd have to be as well, to be a hyper devout Christian and hide from his own government, hide from the Soviets, who of course would persecute anybody that with those beliefs. So when he came to power, he and Kirill are very good friends and very close buddies. So Kirill is approached by the Saudi Arabians. The Saudi Arabians want to know, what the heck is this box? What do we do with it? We know that you saved manuscripts from the Crusades that might give us some clue to this. Well, apparently the Russians only had half the story, and Kirill only had half of it. But guess who holds all the other holy books? Guess who holds virtually a massive archive of mysterious, arcane, apocryphal books? Who else but the Vatican Archives? So understand, please, that the Russian Orthodox and the Roman Catholics have been mortal enemies. They were mortal enemies through the Crusades. They were mortal enemies through the Inquisition. We've celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the apparitions of Fatima. Even Fatima was saying if the Pope could break down and actually meet with the Russians and consecrate Russia to the heart of the Sacred Virgin Mary, that there would be peace, that all these things could be averted. Well, the popes, of course, did no such thing. They were like, we're not going to talk to those Russian bastards. And so it took a great deal. For the first time in 732 years, that's off the top of my head, might be 762, the Russian Orthodox, leader of the Russian Orthodox Church, decided he was going to go to Rome and actually have a conversation with the Pope. Because they were expected to address the millennium-long rift between Western and Eastern branches of Christianity, or possibly saving the planet by actually taking this box from the Saudi Arabians, maybe somewhere special. So the two religious leaders they're both due to sign, they signed a joint agreement on the contemporary persecution of Christians in the Middle East. And by the way, the Holocaust that's occurred to Christians in Syria, throughout the Middle East, the cruelty at the hands of organizations like ISIS, backed by the United States and the CIA, what have you, has been the untold story of all of this. I'm sure, everybody gets up in arms when you persecute the Jews or when you persecute the Kurds, but nobody seems to mind when you just willy-nilly, pell-mell, wholesale kill off Christians. And that's what's been happening. You've had the deaths of millions of Christians just since George Bush took office in 2001. So they got together on that. But this is where it gets more interesting, is that a mind-boggling report circulating in the Kremlin today. Now, yes, this is Sorcia Fall. Yes, this is she has been, she, whomever it is. People say, well, this person used to be military intelligence. Well, okay. The person we think behind the website actually was what they call COINTELPRO, but he was an expert in U.S., Soviet, and Russian relations, if it's the same person. If it's not, it's a group of Irish nuns this is the story. A group of Irish nuns led by Sister Ciara, who somehow made friends with a bunch of Russian spies, and who somehow then get like top shelf reports from the Russian SVR, which is, I'm sorry, the Russian, the Ministry of Defense and the SVU, which is the former KGB, which Vladimir Putin used to run, which is either true or it sounds more like the plot of a Whoopi Goldberg movie. But the Ministry of Defense states that the sudden launching yesterday of Aerospace Forces, AF, of 2 satellites are for the protection of Federation Naval Research Vessel Admiral Vladimitsky, which has just departed the Saudi Arabian port of Jeddah after taking on board a mysterious object described as the Ark of Gabriel, whose importance is deemed so vital that President Putin has further ordered naval warships, guided missile carrier Varyag, the my Russian's not that good, the Sovremenyen class destroyer Bystra, Boris Chilikin class fleet oiler Boris Bultima, and the powerful salvage tug Alatu, that upon the ending of their current mission in India, that they are now all to rendezvous with the Admiral Vladimitsky in the Southern Ocean, providing it protection as it sails to Antarctica. So a good chunk of a Russian fleet from all over the world is now ordered by Putin to sail to Antarctica after sailing to Jeddah. So what did they pick up? Now this photograph is really hilarious because this is like if the Pope went to Antarctica. The only contact interface allowed by the Antarctica Guardians, and this is what they're talking about, that there may be people in the center of Antarctica called the Planetary Guardians, is to the returning of them to the ancient weapons of war and destruction upon their immediate discovery, such as the deadly and mysterious Ark of Gabriel device found in Saudi Arabia last year, and that was returned to the Antarctica barrier zone this last February by Russian Orthodox Church leader Patriarch Kirill, and that we detailed in our 18 February report. If you've been listening to Strange Universe Radio, strangeuniverseradio.com, freedomslips.com, every Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 a.m. Russia's top religious leader performs ancient ritual in Antarctica over Saudi Arabia's mysterious Ark of Gabriel. Now, it's just funny that he's there with the penguins, but when he arrived in the Antarctic barrier zone on February 18th, 2016, which is right in the middle of winter, by the way, so it's interesting that it's all ice-free while he's there. It's also interesting that the Russian Orthodox Church actually has a church. They actually have a temple in Antarctica. So he actually managed to go visit that particular temple. Now let's get back to this again. You have a box that's found in Mecca that kills 4,000 people. You have the Saudi Arabians going to the Russian Orthodox Church. You have the Russian Orthodox Church for the first time in 732 years now talking to the Roman Catholics, actually going to the Roman Catholics, probably asking information from their archives about what the hell's going on. How do we work this box? What do we do to it? Et cetera, et cetera. You have a group that seems to be known as the Planetary Guardians that are demanding that these possibly Atlantean weapons of destruction be returned to them because maybe mankind doesn't know what to do with it, or, you know, that there's a pretty serious or else in there. Now, in the course of this, you have all these officials that decide it's suddenly hip and now for them to now go to Antarctica. So on election day, when Donald Trump was beating the snot out of Hillary Clinton in the Electoral College, on election day, where do you think John Kerry is? John Kerry, who was the Secretary of State, who is our #1 diplomat, by the way, he goes to Antarctica on election day, claiming that, oh, he's checking out some climate change stuff. Same time you have Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon, you know, the only, you know, he's still alive. Neil Armstrong obviously died, but you have Buzz Aldrin down there as well. Now, this is where I want to get into my theory that Barack Obama possibly visited whomever was down there. And here's my theory. Ever since Barack Obama became president of the United States, he's gone on these trips. By the way, he spent like no time in the White House. As a matter of fact, he met with Benjamin Netanyahu one day, and Netanyahu just kind of bitch slapped him. I mean, just literally treated him like a step and fetch it plantation boy, and just bitch slapped him on the TV, and Obama just sat there and took it. And remember when Netanyahu was like, if I can't get it through you, you Muslim from Kenya, I'm going to go talk to, you know, my people I'm going to talk to my Congress, I think he said. And Obama jumped on a plane and left Netanyahu basically alone in the White House for about 2 weeks or so, basically running the show, running the government. Now, Obama, not only does he travel everywhere, I think in the whole time he was president, he spent maybe probably less than 6 months, I think, if that, actually physically in the White House. His whole big thing was to jump on not only Air Force One, but get a whole fleet of planes and take all of his buddies and all of his friends on these big junkets. He went to India, and it cost us $200 million for him to go to India. Of course, it didn't help that Michelle has 150 assistants. And by the way, I know we do shows like this, and I know all you folks have are interested in the bizarre and the mysterious. But if you look at the great mysteries of the modern age, you could probably look at places like Area 51, the Bermuda Triangle, the Loch Ness Monster. But I pretend that one of our great mysteries is what in the heck is going on in Michelle Obama's underpants. That's one of the great mysteries, I think, of the millennial generation. So Obama, his first big trip, he takes this posse of about 83 people with him. I'm not sure if it's 83. I've heard 93, but 83 or so. He takes a posse of people of 83 people. They have Air Force One, Air Force Two. They have helicopters. They have all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And so let me tell you the strange things that have happened when he goes somewhere with this gang. The first place he went was Oslo, Norway. And he goes to Oslo, Norway on December 9th of 2009. Look it up. December 9th of 2009. Barack Obama receives the Nobel Peace Prize. I'll let that sink in for a second. Barack Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize. To his credit, Barack Obama also said, all right, I get it. I'm black. I'm cool. I know. I'm the coolest. I'm Joe Cool. I'm Mick Cool. I'm Top Cat. But I haven't really done anything yet to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. And by the way, throughout his presidency, he never did do anything to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. He ran guns to Mexico. He spied on all of us. He destroyed Libya. He destroyed actually most of the Middle East. He funded ISIS. The little bitty stuff. So in the course of this, Obama goes to Oslo, Norway with his gang to get the Nobel Peace Prize. But then two weird things happen when he's there. This weird gray triangular UFO starts flying all around downtown Moscow. That's one thing that happened on December 9th. But at the same time, and look this up, please. I don't expect to provide you a graphic. But something happened called the Norway Spiral. And the Norway Spiral, I contend, was actually, and I have proof of this, that it was actually powered by something called ISCAT. And ISCAT stands for the European Incoherent Scattered Radiation Array. And it's their version of HARP. And it comes out of the Tromsø Valley, and it created a zero-point energy black hole between here and the sun, which did a couple of interesting things. It lasted approximately 9 minutes, and I'm not sure if Obama was there with his group to show the demonstration of ISCAT and to show what it could do, its potential, and to show the New World Order gang, we truly are kind of gods. And it did a couple of things. First off, years ago, back in 95, 96, and I'll introduce him to you in a moment, an extraterrestrial, a Pleiadian contactee, told me that there was something wrong with the sun, that the sun was going crazy, and that we quite possibly could be wiped out by a solar flare or coronal mass event, which might be, once again, what the planetary guardians are doing with this mysterious space wall that seems to come and go as things get more worked up. And then something had to be done to fix the sun. Now, when this zero-point energy black hole hits, after this point on December 9th, the sun goes quiescent, goes almost completely quiet for the better part of 3 or 4 years. So, and of course, how do you calm down a sun? Well, if suns are binary, and most of them are in our galaxy, and you have and one goes supernova and becomes a black hole, that black hole begins to feed off its twin, and it takes effluvient and it calms the twin down as it's sort of feeding this energy off it. So there's a good possibility that at the Norway Spiral that this zero-point energy black hole was all about, number one, pulling energy off the sun so that the sun doesn't go crazy, so that we don't have the coronal mass ejections. That's the first one. The second one is, and this is a little more difficult to explain, since we're talking about the Arctic and North Pole, South Pole, and whatever else, magnetic north was only discovered in 1842. And we found that magnetic north had 3 magnetic poles of energy, that it shifted from A to B to C. And it was approximately in Baffin Bay, Canada, I suppose. Now, it was perfectly fat and happy sitting where it was until 1945. And in 1945, and here's magnetic north is here, and I'm sorry, true north is here, the nodal axis of the planet is here, and magnetic north is here. So what happens is that in 1945, suddenly magnetic north becomes untethered from the center of the Earth, and it starts moving north. And as it starts moving north in increments where it starts slow, and then it started getting faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, what was going to happen if magnetic north and true north actually met? Now, in 1945, the difference of all this is that we started testing atomic weapons. Not us, but also then the Russians and then the Chinese. Matter of fact, we've dropped 2,700 nuclear bombs on our worst enemy, the state of Nevada. And when you consider that then we got into bigger bombs, we got into hydrogen bombs, we got into cobalt bombs, we got into bomb, all these various bombs. And testing them all over the world, in the Bikini Islands, down by Tahiti, all these, every place except Antarctica, I might add. And what happened is that these weapons not only were responsible for ripping holes open in the time-space continuum, but that they also, these weapons, knocked us off orbit. It's like throwing a big shoe in a washing machine, and the delicate balance of the rotation of Earth started coming unglued. And so the military and the RAND Corporation all start doing these studies, and they're saying that in the 2012 to about 2016 time frame, unless something is done about this, if magnetic north and true north meet. Now look, they built a huge model of the Earth, an electromagnetic model of the Earth at the RAND Corporation in Santa Monica. And they started doing all these tests where they were like, okay, so if magnetic north and true north actually meet, what happens? And in a percentage of the tests, you have an electromagnetic shifting of the Earth. And the electromagnetic shift is it hits, and then it just goes, the magnetic poles then shift. Now, we know throughout the history of the planet, just by going down in the sediment or so, that we've actually had an electromagnetic pole shift of the Earth about 150 times in the some 6 billion year history of Earth, which is when we think how old it is. The Maya, by the way, believed that the universe is 16.4 billion years old. Modern science believes the Earth is about 14 billion years old. But every time we look deeper into the cosmos and find out more, we find that the Mayans are right and knew more about the Earth and the cosmos than we do. So if mag north and true north met, if the electromagnetic poles shifted, then that means that every electronic device that we use today that's connected to a ground wire would simply fry, would just be gone. And the Hopi have a prophecy about this, that your electronic devices would turn on you, that they would catch on fire, that, so they have a whole big prophecy about what would happen if that were to occur. Obviously, if the entire planet were to flip, it was believed that the planet would just not flip all the way, but kind of loll on its side, and the new North Pole would be quite possibly Saudi Arabia, somewhere in, Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Or nothing could happen. Or, and here's what's happening now. Here, magnetic north is moving at a very quick pace, and it starts speeding up, right on a rendezvous to get there about 2012 or so. Obama and his gang go to Norway. They go to Norway, they see the spiral in the sky, and from that day, you can mark my words on this, from that day, magnetic north, apparently listening to too much Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh, took a hard right turn. And the hard right turn of magnetic north now, instead of going towards the north, is now heading due east, and it's almost 2,000 kilometers away from where it was in 2009, and now it's sitting in the middle of the Siberian Sea. Okay, second weird thing that happens, and I'm just pointing this out because of Antarctica. Second weird thing that happens is Barack Obama goes to South Africa. Now, the first time he goes to South Africa, he's the president of the United States. He's the first black president of the United States, and he wants to meet Nelson Mandela. Well, he gets there, and he's told Nelson Mandela's busy. Nelson Mandela doesn't feel well. And Nelson Mandela can't meet the first black president of the United States. Also, a president of the United States who's also a communist, also a socialist, exactly like Mandela was, communist socialist. And he's too busy to meet him. Well, that's because he's dead, and nobody wants to tell you that he's dead. I don't know why, But nobody wants to tell you that he's dead. Now, later that year in December, they then say, oh, Nelson Mandela has died. And there's a lot of people talking about changes in timelines or whatever else. No, he was dead, and they covered it up for some reason until they could get all these world leaders together. Now, December 17th, the year Nelson Mandela died, there were 2 comets that were crossing in the sky. There was all kinds of crazy stuff going on where people were predicting like end of the world scenarios. Obama goes there. I'm not sure if you remember, he has that interpreter that's just waving his hands in the air, saying all kinds of crazy things. But Obama takes his posse of 83 guys again, and they go to a place called the Temple of the Unknown God. I'm sorry, the Nameless God. Nameless and Unknown God. Temple of the Nameless and Unknown God. And it's this big temple, this temple in the middle of the desert. And all these people go there, and they perform some kind of weird, wacky ceremony, and all kinds of weird things happen. Last but not least, Obama decides he's going to go to Argentina. And he decides he's going to go to Patagonia, and so once again he takes his posse down there, goes down there, and he kind of disappears for a couple of days. And my theory was, does he go to Antarctica? Does he meet to this new base that we have there by this baffle of pyramids? And does he possibly meet with these planetary guardians, whoever it is that's living at the center of Antarctica, and have some sort of tete-a-tete with them? So that's my theory on this. Now, here we go. Upon leaving Antarctica, the barrier zone, Secretary John Kerry then arrives in Christchurch, New Zealand on 12 November, where he stayed overnight before his traveling to Wellington the following day. And in the early morning hours of the 13th of November, while Secretary Kerry was sleeping in Christchurch, this report notes this region was struck by a powerful 7.8 magnitude earthquake, and that SVR analysts state was a predictable consequence known to be used by these Antarctica guardians as a warning message not to interfere with their mission or research. Now, the crazy story is that John Kerry went down there and was actually asking the planetary guardians to basically interfere in the election or back up the whole New World Order, which, very, very much is over now. So who are the planetary guardians? Let's get to this, and I'm not sure how much time we have left here, but it's we started about half an hour late, right? So you good, Ron? We all right? Okay, we're gonna actually we'll take a quick break, and I'm just gonna get some water and kind of powder my nose. And we'll be back in moments after this. Can I get up for a second? All right, I don't know, since we started late, did you want to, you just tell me how long you want to go till?
Just go till you think you're done.
Okay, all right,
You got another half hour. We can go.
okay. Like I said, we started at 12:30, so, all right, so I figured 3:15. Okay. Let me know when you start up. Oh, okay. Welcome back to liverevelations.com. That's liverevelations.com. This is Dr. Sean David Morton. Welcome back. I want to say thank you so much to the thousands of people who are out there listening to this broadcast right now. I want to say thanks to Lorraine Fenton, thanks to Ron James for putting this whole thing together for me. It's been so great that people have gotten behind myself and my wife to help us. And once again, this is all about suggested donations, all about you folks, helping us, helping my wife with legal bills, helping us with the with what we need to pay my legal team in my desperate fight against the forces of the U.S. government and the mythical creature known as the DOJ. For all of this, I once again, I just want to let you folks know that never in my life have I knowingly broken the law. I did everything that I thought that was fitting and proper to do, filling out the paperwork. That worked with CPAs. I worked with people who are experts in all of this, and basically I've just done things to make the government angry, like publish my book Sands of Time and be an investigative reporter that is exposed government conspiracies over and over and over again, being on the radio every day, Monday through Friday on revolutionradio.co, freedomslips.com, on my radio show at Strange Universe Radio, which is one of the top radio programs on the internet. So once again, this is all suggested donations. liverevelations.com, if you could see fit to open your hearts and open your wallets and donate to our cause to help us with medical bills, to help us with our legal bills as well, to fight the nefarious forces that are aligned against us. So I hope I'm providing you with interesting information. I hope I'm giving you theories. I'm hoping you're enjoying the presentation, and I can't thank the people enough who donated this, who saw that there was a friend in need, and they all came together to say, well, let's put this together and let's do kind of a telethon to help raise money for us so that we can we can pay our bills and hopefully put this thing behind us. So once again, it's all about you. We decided not to make it a paid event, to make it all suggested donation, because I believe more in the bigness and the openness of people's hearts than I do and passing the hat around, if you will, than saying, okay, we'll pay $20 to see this. So once again, I want to thank the thousands of you out there now that are actually watching this. I want to thank those who are donating to liverevelations.com, not only to pay for this broadcast, but as I said, my wife had a stroke. She was clinically dead for 4 minutes. She was in a coma for a couple of days, and so she's still in the process of recovering. It's been slow, but she is kind of up, walking around and doing better. So anyway, so I appreciate your generosity. I appreciate your love. I appreciate all of you out there who are watching this broadcast. And once again, it's all suggested donations. So anything you got, $20, $50, $100 would be fantastic and help the cause, help us pay for this, and help us with our legal and medical bills, which is why we put this together. And I thought information also. I do intuitive readings for people. I do astrology, astrocartography, which is great places to live. I do my patented double-deck tarot, and everybody that's ever had a reading said it's one of the best readings I've ever had, that it's the most comprehensive, that it's fantastic for the price. So you can also give us a call at 310-318-1848. That's 310-318-1848 to book a reading. Okay, who are the planetary guardians? Let's take a look and let's solve some mysteries, and I'll give you some really interesting stuff towards the end. So we did start late, so we've got about another half hour to go here, half an hour to maybe 45 minutes. So this gentleman was a friend of mine. I met him through my work on Strange Universe, the television program that ran for about 3 years on the United Paramount Network. And his name is Audrey. And Audrey worked as a delivery man for Comet Express in Miami. And Audrey continues to be, he lives in Germany now, but he was one of the greatest UFO contactees ever. I mean, he had photographs, he had film, he had At one point, we took him out into the Nevada desert. We handed him a camera that had been duct taped and wax sealed and said, go get us something. And he came back with amazing footage of tubular-shaped motherships going through dimensional vortexes, whatever else. But in my opinion, he was one of the greatest UFO contactees in the world. And the only reason that you never heard of him is because he didn't want to know if he wanted to make himself public. He would never give us rights to his material. And so you folks here, you may have actually seen it leaked on the net a couple of times. Randy Winters was the person that actually introduced us to Audrey in the first place, but we became very good friends. And throughout the years, I went back and forth to see him in Florida and partake in his adventures with the Pleiadians. This is a Pleiadian drone, a scout craft, and his, by the way, his story is very interesting. He claims that he was about 8 years old and that he was from a migrant family from Cuba, and that he was just kicking a football by the Orange Bowl, and as he kicked this football, the UFO came down from out of the sky. He started running from it. He jumped on his bike and was pedaling away, and the UFO picked him up. That he was then taken on board the craft by a tall, blonde Nordic, oddly enough, whose name is Audrey. He was placed in a tube, and his consciousness was sort of stripped from his body, where it was then placed in the ongoing consciousness of someone else in Brazil, and that this Audrey commander of this Pleiadian ship then took a piece of his consciousness and put it into Audrey. Now, this is where the whole concept for the James Cameron movie, who does track this kind of stuff, Avatar, actually came from. So he said, I'm an avatar of Audrey, this UFO Pleiadian, who does come from some point in the future. So while you're talking to me, you're really talking to him, and his consciousness is within me, and he kind of works him like a video game, if you will, from inside the ship. So kind of an interesting aspect of this, that he claimed that he was an avatar, that he was here and there on the ship at the same time. But had all kinds of adventures and took his girlfriend Claudina along with him. So they would go out into the Everglades, and this is an example of a Pleiadian drone ship. It's unmanned, but what they do is that they sit over all the major cities, and they sit over the major cities, and they're invisible. They turn on an invisibility cloak, and he claims that what they do is that they process the consciousness of people in the cities, the consciousness of the people, and are constantly going through that. And by the way, kind of like Santa Claus, if you will, judging the actions of people for good or bad, whether or not you donate money to this particular show to help us out. It all counts. It's all part of an expanding realm of consciousness. That he says they have this blanket where they're constantly absorbing information from people, and as the ship actually took off going over them, you can actually see that the ship actually starts to become opaque, and you actually see the clouds as the invisibility screen goes on the ship. Now, I actually had video of this, of a Pleiadian UFO where the invisibility screen would then just turn on and the thing would like disappear right before your eyes. He had a balcony that actually overlooked a golf course in Miami. So he would go out on the golf course, and the Pleiadian ships would come in, and they would open the invisibility screen. And so he could be looking right at it, taking a photo where somebody standing maybe 20 feet away would not be able to see it. Now, he's crouching down, actually taking this shot through the railings of the porch of his house. Of interest, he also said that the UFO in the very end, the one that's the bell-shaped UFO, he says that UFO was built by BMW Messerschmitt in Brazil at some point in the 1930s, and it was flying along with these other craft. This particular ship is what's known as a Type 7 variation beam ship, and according to him, the slats on this thing actually come up, and it creates a vibratory frequency along with the crystal at the top that allows that ship to make trips actually through time. That's also the sun in the background. I mean, it's way off in the distance, but the yellow sun taking up the entire sky, where he told me back in 1995 that there's something wrong with the sun, that the Pleiadians were actively in the process of fixing the sun and quite possibly putting shields up around the Earth so they won't get hit by a kill shot so that life on Earth continues. Now, this is one of the greatest UFO photos ever taken, and he would be riding in the craft, and he would take photos of the high-definition view screen inside another ship. Because here you have what's called a Type 1 Pleiadian beam ship with a Type 7 ship, but it's in the clouds 30,000 feet above Miami. So that's just, you know, if it hasn't been hoaxed, which these photos have been analyzed over and over and over again to say that they're not, then this is it's just one of the greatest UFO pictures ever taken. You can understand maybe somebody standing on the ground and taking photos of something, you know, maybe hanging on a stick or photoshopping it or whatever else. But to take a shot in the clouds of this is amazing. So once again, there's a close-up of the Type 7 variation. You can see the glowing red jewel-like power converters on the top. You can see the geodesic crystal actually at the top of it as well. This is just another version of the ship, same ship actually of taken on his golf course. Here we go. He's in the clouds. He's in another ship. He's taking photos of this. He's on the underbelly of that. It's another sort of what I call the teapot ship. That's the ship as it begins to, not only the outer hull begins to glow, but it creates a cloud cover for itself actually in the clouds, and it's very easy for them to move around because of the cloudy nature of the city of Miami. Now, this one here, he actually is from a videotape, and he's actually driving his car while this while this particular ship is actually chasing him down the road in his car. This one is very interesting because not only it's very subtle, but not only do you see the ship in the foreground, but way in the background, there's a little light actually right up here. That's actually a tubular-shaped mothership that's waiting for that ship to return. So in the analysis of this, we found that there were two ships. One was a big mothership, and the other one was one of the scout craft actually in the picture. It's the same ship of his. Okay, now, the ships vary in size, but there are craft that are over 100 meters across. That's about 300 feet or so across. And Adrian claimed that after the war, that when the Germans actually started using their technology, and this is to move into space, they were stopped. They were supposedly intercepted by this galactic council, by the Pleiadians, by the Arcturians, by the Altarians, to not being very upset. They didn't want people moving into space. They did not want humanity moving into space. So he claims that a group of German and Italian scientists who had then gone to not only Antarctica, but also an area on the Matamoros Plain in Brazil, that they had in fact kind of merged cultures, that they had teamed up with these Pleiadians and these various Nordic extraterrestrials, and that they teamed up with them, and that they're saying, okay, you're going to leave behind this Nazi attitude stuff, and if you want to start moving out into space, that they all accepted kind of a greater cosmic consciousness to then all work together. But he also talked about how the Germans and the Pleiadians were at the ice-free zone, not only in Antarctica, but in the Matamoros Plain in Brazil. Now, this seems like kind of a hard thing to swallow. Okay, so they're in the forests of Brazil. They're working for, we guess, the betterment of mankind. They're moving out into space with humanity. But he actually physically went to this base in Brazil, took his girlfriend, and photographed these ships that were, once again, about 300 feet in diameter, huge craft, very much the same or similar design as the Haunebu 1, 2, and 3 and the Vril crafts of the Germans. This is the one that he said was built by BMW Messerschmitt. I guess you would call it the German Bell or the Nazi Bell, what have you. But this photograph, and he would never give me the photo, I actually took it from over his shoulder as he was going through this giant kind of paste-up book of photos. This is him in the foreground, right here. That's him. And his girlfriend is actually taking the shot, and these craft, once again, they're about 100 meters in diameter, 300 feet big, are actually landing on these platforms in the Matamoros Plain. And he claims that these are the planetary guardians that are protecting Earth, that are creating the shield around the Earth, that are working to calm down the sun, and quite possibly this was, and collecting Atlantean weapons, which may just be what they demanded when they found the Ark of Gabriel, which is why Krill went down there, the Russians supported it, John Kerry going down there, possibly asking them to, divert whatever their agenda is. So, so there it is. All right, so that's the solution to the planetary guardians. That has to do with this photo that I promised to show you that has to do with this presence down there and their protection of Earth. Now, are they the last battalion when East meets West, as Hitler said? Are they responsible for helping us with the ecology of the planet? Are they the ones responsible for putting up this planetary shield that NASA can't figure out, that actually just amplifies when solar storms are imminent? Are they the ones that our governments and the various governments of the world are meeting with down there to start guiding us into a more peaceful transition? Now, he also said something about that the Arcturians had actually taken over the protection of Earth, that the Pleiadians just gave up and they said, look, it's too much karma, we don't want to take it on ourselves. And the Arcturians said that Earth is like a flickering candle in the wind and it's too valuable to let it go out. So, and that they are the ones also, he also told me that the Arcturians were the ones that were actually doing the crop circles in England. And he said to watch the crop circles, that they would morph from circles into sigils or glyphs, and that they would begin to predict the future. And they did, actually. They started predicting comets, cosmic consciousness. They started predicting various events in the Mayan calendar leading up to 2012. So it's been an amazing and stunning ride in regards to my research, which, again, without your help and without your assistance and without your contributions to liverevelations.com today, that might just stop. You know, everything might just go away. I'm not kidding you. It's that dire. So I'm asking once again for the thousands of people that are watching this program, anything that you can contribute to liverevelations.com to help me in my battle and my fight against some very dark and dire individuals. So, okay, so last but not least, let me just talk about a couple of things here. You've got a big event coming up this summer that I wanted to talk a bit about, because on August 21st, you actually have a solar eclipse that is a truly American solar eclipse. It starts up in Oregon, Washington, goes all the way across the country, and ends in just off the coast of Florida. But what also happens is that this eclipse cuts mostly through the red states. This eclipse truly divides the United States in half. So you're going to see a huge rise in radicalism, very much like you saw this crazy man who opened fire on a bunch of Republican senators. This Hodgkinson, once again connected to the YMCA, which is connected to World Visions International, which is a major CIA front organization. But the fact that not only that, but the penumbra of the eclipse, where it lasts for about between 9 and 11 minutes, is directly over the New Madrid Fault. And this is one of the big predictions that Edgar Cayce had, that the rupturing of the New Madrid Fault would split the United States in two, not just metaphorically, but physically, and that the Mississippi River would be 100 miles wide, and that the Great Lakes would actually empty into the Pacific. So there's the good possibility that the triggering of the New Madrid Fault could come from this eclipse that's happening on August 21st. I'm not saying it is, because you actually have various super governmental agencies, maybe even the planetary guardians, that are actually doing things to actually trigger various types of earthquakes to release pressure off these quakes. So I'm just saying that spiritually and metaphysically it's going to lead to revolt and revolution. Geologically, it could possibly put massive stress on the New Madrid Fault. And at the same time, whether you know this or not, it's another alignment of galactic center. And we had an alignment of galactic center in 1998 and 99. Of course, the next one was December 21st of 2012, and this one is going to be August 21st of 2017. Every single time we have a galactic center alignment, there's a flip, there's a jump, there's a skip, if you will, in the rotation of the planet. So we'll see what happens on the eclipse, if there's going to be that skip rotation that's happened on the last solar alignments. This is the path of the eclipse that runs right through the United States. This is just there's a jet with one of these triangular craft. Sorry, this is real quickly. This is footage was taken in the Inyo National Forest of one of these black ships. And watch it get out of Dodge. It puts out a blue beam, and then it just goes away. I can't not play this one. This was taken in 2008 in France. Just a couple of greatest hits for you at the end. This is what's called the TR, which stands for Terrestrial Reconnaissance, but it's actually somewhere around, not the TR-3B, but now they're up to somewhere around the TR-8s and TR-9s. But it's actually got a plasma drive in the center, and this was taken by a couple of French kids, French couple actually just outside of Paris. And you'll actually see where the plasma drive begins to engage. and then it encompasses the whole craft to make a time-space jump, and then poosh. There we go. And if you want to read all about those, in my third book, Isomer Protocol, we talk about the development of the TR-3 called Vipers, and we also talk about the development of our Starfleet as well. So there we go. There's the plasma ship. Last but not least, this is kind of fun. I don't know if I can actually get it to play, but there we go. I'm not going to do much with it, but this was actually taken by some friends of mine that run. This is over the Temple Mount. This is right over the Temple Mount, the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. And this is taken from on top of the Mount of Olives. There it goes. And it just irradiated everything and then just shot off into space. And then for several hours after that, there were all these subsidiary ships. This went on for hours, where you had these ships, these red, just all flashing in the sky. And that was taken from on top of the Mount of Olives at a store in the Mount of Olives, on top of the Mount of Olives, looking over towards the temple in Jerusalem. So, all right. Last but not least, I'm not going to read this, but going through changes in the U.S. just in the chart of the United States. In the chart of the United States, the Battle of Lexington you have Pluto, which is a planet of destruction, in Capricorn. And Capricorn is a planet that has to do with banks, has to do with money systems, has to do with governments. So just imagine Pluto underneath all these governments and all these banks and all these monetary systems and whatever else, just swinging his scythe, just chipping away at what it is. When the shot heard round the world occurred on April 19th of 1774, I think it was, after the Boston Tea Party. I think that's the right date. It was the Pluto, which was in Capricorn from 1766 until about 1780 or so, was at the same place in the sky as it was when Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. So Donald Trump might just be considered the shot heard round the world by the American people, that they're just completely fed up. And the Sibley chart of the United States just shows that the coming destruction and economic possible collapse of the United States is coming. Now, does Trump have a plan for this? Is he moving troops into various cities? Does he just want the entire economic system to collapse so that then he can start over and make America great again? We might just see. But Pluto coming to 27 degrees Capricorn, where it's at, the Pluto return in the United States, is particularly dire for the U.S. When I do my readings, I've done a couple of readings for some wonderful women this week. And in the psychic readings, when I do the astrocartography, I found that these two women had moved almost directly on top of a Pluto line in their astrocartography chart. And one woman, I said to her, "Okay, who's died? How did you lose your money? How did you lose your house?" And she starts crying and saying, her son was killed, that she had to face bankruptcy, that her house was actually in foreclosure. So I was sad for just saying that this happens when you move to these Pluto lines. Another lovely lady as well had a challenge where, this Pluto line was right through her house. It went right through her bedroom, for goodness sakes. And she worked as a nurse and somebody that specialized in midwifery or a doula, actually. And she had a terrible case where a woman came in and she lost the woman and the baby. She had to face death, and that still had haunted her. But she was right on top of this Pluto line. So Pluto at 27 degrees Sagittarius is just all kinds of bad. And unfortunately, it's moving right across from that, because Pluto entered Capricorn for the first time January 25th of 2008, and then retrograded back into Sagittarius one final time on June 14th, and then it traveled back into Capricorn on November 26th of 2008. Of course, we make Barack Obama president of the United States, who then decides to, and right in that period of time also is when we had the financial collapse, in Sagittarius, but moving back into Capricorn, of course, on September 11th of 2008. So it's going to remain there until January 21st. So Pluto's in Capricorn from 2008 until January 21st of 2024. So for 16 years, Pluto will engage in a process of breaking down and then rebuilding the structures on which we depend for a successful experience in the material world. But Pluto first crosses 27 degrees Capricorn from June 22nd, 2022 to August 4th of 2022, that summer. Now the retrogrades and crosses, the retrogrades and crosses again December 10th, 2022, which means it backs up over us and runs over us again to January 12th of 2023. Then again, September 20th to 2023 to November 1st of 2023, backs up over us again. So it's like the truck hits us, backs us over us, hits us again, backs up, spins out, does a wheelie or a donut on our faces, and then finally moves into glorious Aquarius in January of 2024. Then back into Capricorn in September of 2024. Then the new age finally, when it moves into Aquarius for good on the solstice of December 21st of 2024. That's when we can all sing, and the moon is in the 7th house, and Jupiter aligns with Mars, etc., etc. All right, as we kind of wrap this up here, Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky was a Russian mystic who lived in the 1800s and around the turn of the century. She was a contemporary of Aleister Crowley, of Albert Einstein, of A.E. Waite, of Disraeli, of all these metaphysical influences. And she was famous for her seances. She was famous for ectoplasmic beings appearing, all kinds of crazy stuff. So Blavatsky had a vision of the end time. And in her vision of the end time, she talked about how that there would be a Death Star, and that this Death Star would be responsible or be an effect of, or shall I say, that when it happened, that it would start a massive culling of people and animals. That this was when she saw the Armageddon or the apocalypse that she saw coming starting. Now, a lot of people thought that these were comets, that thought that there were different things in the sky. You know, after she said that, and she said this would be right at the beginning of the end days. And isn't it interesting that we've got the Ark of Gabriel that was only to be maybe used in the end days? So we've got these end days scenarios all kind of occurring. Now, believe it or not, said Mr. Ripley, When Stars Collide by Dr. Daniel Brown of the Nottingham Trust University explains the curious case of what he calls the boom star. And in 1738, you had these two stars collide. And in 1738, it started, the light of that event began its journey to Earth, to taking a couple of hundred years, almost close to 300 years or so. So it turns out that the boom star, and I don't know if maybe the shockwave hits us as well, but the boom star actually comes, and this is the other thing that Blavatsky said. She also talked about the sign of the swan. And she said the sign of the swan was something that had to do with Lucifer, because the swans are very bad-natured creatures, but they seem calm on the outside. They're very beautiful, but in fact they're really kind of vicious. So she talked about this doom star having something to do with the connection of the swan, or in the swan's neck, and that this would be the beginning of the end, the age of the culling of humans and animals. And it turns out that this star, this boom star, becomes visible from Earth coming summer of 2022 at the same time that Pluto's moving back and forth over 27 degrees Sagittarius. You have all this destruction. But it actually appears in the constellation of Cygnus the Swan on June 1st of 2022, no less than 3 weeks before you have Pluto come to this dire and rather destructive part in the chart of the United States. So doesn't mean that this doom star, this Death Star, as she called it, she actually coined the term Death Star. Does this Death Star bring massive destruction? Does Donald Trump rebuild us, or do we then reduce into chaos at that period of time? In my own prophecies and predictions, what I've seen, and you can probably go online if you want to go on our website, strangeuniverseradio.com. You can download something called, for $10, you can download the Vajra Chronicles there. And it's a trip I took to 100 years in the future, doing don't really want to call it a remote viewing, but what the Tibetans call a time transference, a soul transference. It's sort of like if you do past life regressions, you can also go the other way and do post-life progressions as well. And I progressed to about 100 years in the future and looked back on the history. And in 1994, I predicted terrorist attacks on Washington, D.C. and New York. I then predicted wars with the Islamic Jihad, that this would then result in the bankruptcy of the United States, that as this progressed, that next we would actually be battling Russia and Germany together, actually as a, well, we don't do much about it, but Russia and Germany actually then invading the Middle East, which then comes along with a conflict with China, starting in the decade of the early 2020s. Now, my book Sands of Time, which I'll just take a look at here again. In my book Sands of Time is talks very much about how what we're preparing for, the trillions of dollars and the secret space program and all that, does have to do with what appears to be an invasion by Alpha Draconians, by reptilians, actually sometime in the early 2020s. And Al Bielek was a good friend of mine, and he claims that he went to the year 2239 after the Philadelphia experiment, and that he then saw backwards that there was a great war in the heavens. Now, it's interesting because Bielek talks about a war with the Galactic Council and the Pleiadians, and they battle these reptilians, but then they get wounded, or they manage to actually then throw the Alpha Draconians back onto the Earth and then trap them here with some kind of shield or field or what have you. Well, this is right out of the Book of Revelation, because the Book of Revelation very much talks about how there's a great battle with the Archangel Michael, that the Archangel Michael actually battles the red dragon, and that he's wounded. Michael's wounded, but he casts the dragon down to Earth, and then we have to deal with it from there. So I hope you enjoyed this. I want to thank again my friends in this. I want to thank Ron James. I want to thank Lorien Fenton. I want to thank all the people that helped us put this together. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and watching. I hope you found it amazing and delightful and entertaining. We'll see what happens. I mean, I've got a good shot at, if the rule of law still stands, if the Constitution means anything, then, or common law, or the right to face your accuser, which I was never given the ability to do, if any of that means anything, then I should be fine. If not, then there may just be bad stuff ahead for me, and it's completely undeserved. And again, I've never knowingly broken the law. I've done everything. I did everything that I knew to actually follow the letter of the law as I knew it, and worked with CPAs and experts on all of these things. And then the government just didn't like it. That was more of an annoyance to them that needed to be slapped down, and they needed to find somebody that was the best of us. They needed to find somebody that was a leader in this movement, somebody who was outspoken about this, and who better to take down than somebody who's on the radio every day, who was a TV producer, who writes movies and screenplays. Once again, working nonstop for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. And my sincerest and humble apologies for the 13 friends and family that we did paperwork for, that it didn't work, that we never got it back, but that bad things happen to these people anyway. Well, not bad things. They came to us in dire positions, and we just tried to present them with what possibly could be solutions. But once again, liverevelations.com. We put this together specifically because we needed your love in the form of some capital and some funding to again help my wife with what she's going through. Not only medically but personally with what's happening, and to help me to make sure that I pay this fantastic legal team of people that once again are trying to work solutions of all of this along the lines of the Constitution, along the lines of common law. And we'll see if that still stands in this nation. It's all about truth, justice, and the American way. So I just want to say that I've done everything that I can to enlighten and entertain and hopefully amuse all of you out there. And, every day of my life has been devoted to, once again, working diligently for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. And let me sign off with the one thing that I always talk about, and this has to do with the mottos of great civilizations. The Egyptians were as above, so below, as within, so without. This was what was written on the tablet, the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great, who supposedly ruled Egypt for 1,000 years, that many people thought was Enoch, who actually built the baffles of pyramids across the planet with with the help of the sons of God who later fell and were sort of trapped here. The motto of the great Roman civilization was "To thine own self be true." The Greeks was "Know thyself," really. Tempus Noscum was know thyself. And the motto of the great American civilization, when they finally put the print on the gravestone of what we tried to do with the United States and America, was probably going to be "More is better." If I just had more of something, it'd be better. But I think we're beyond that. I think we're in a Pisces progression. I think we're learning to think beyond the materialism of what we've made this great nation. I pray that Trump just doesn't become meet the new boss, same as the old boss, and that he does drain the swamp and he does do the things that I think we have great opportunity there. And no matter who he is or what you think, that we should support the president in what he's done. But the motto of the Maya civilization is always very interesting. The Maya who gave us this calendar, who are telling us actually that after December 21st of 2012, that there's a great veil that's being lifted off the right-hand side of the brain. Well, the right-hand side of the brain, the left-hand side of the brain thinks in terms of geometry, numbers, and linear time, height, width, breadth, and a measurement of time, A, B, C, D, E. The right-hand side of the brain thinks in terms of symbols, archetypes, fluidic movement, dance, music. It's excited by psilocybins. It's the crazy lady in the purple moo-moo running through the field of orange poppies. But it also houses the quantum side of the brain. And the quantum side of the brain sees all time and all space, past, present, future, which is how intuitive readings or psychic stuff works. And the point being is that now that this veil is lifted, now the bad guys, the dragon is dead. It's just the tail that's slashing across. And this dragon needs to silence people like me who are telling you that now you're free. They're telling you that now you have access to all of this. So really, it's incredible and fantastic that you see humanism versus what's being known as transhumanism, that for the first time in 26,000 years, we're now living with the veil, with full access to our minds or to our brains with the veil off the right-hand side of the brain. So the Maya had a motto for their civilization that went, all is one, life has purpose, God is love. If all really is one, as Edgar Cayce also said, then that means we're biologically connected to each other, we're chemically connected to the earth, and we're atomically connected to everything, not just in the galaxy, but everything in the universe. That means we're beings of this universe, we're creations of this universe, and that each day we can be the sons and daughters of God, and that we can experience that ennobling truth. If life has purpose, then that means that no matter how many low kicks, dirty tricks, and rotten licks that you've gone through throughout your life, no matter how much terror and how much tragedy, that it puts you in the exact right place and time, in the exact right moment to become the hero that you need to be. And believe you me, in what's coming, you all need to be heroes. And what's coming, you all need to understand what it's like to be broken down to your base essence and then rise like a phoenix, which is what scorpions are now. All you scorpions, you're not scorpions anymore. You're phoenixes, you're amethyst phoenixes that are rising from the ashes. And if God really is love, I want you to think about that. If God really is love, and remember, we all started in eternity past. We all started at the same time. We all started with the Creator at the beginning of all time and space. And we're moving with that Creator to the end of all time and space. There's no such thing as old souls. There's just people that pay attention in class and people that don't. So if God really is love, then that means the first thought, the prima mobile of everything in this creation of the universe is all about love, is all about God's love of that creation. It is all about love of you. And once again, it's all things are possible. All things are possible by them that love God, that them that are chosen according to His purpose. So I want to say thank you again for coming on, to the thousands of people that tuned into this, for coming on to this presentation. I want to say thank you to my friends that said Sean needs help, and we want to get him the help that he needs. So once again, livepresentations.com is where you can donate to help pay for this setup, to help pay for the fantastic people that are here, and to help me in my fight, my quest against some truly dire and evil people and the individual. So once again, evil only gets vanquished if good is very, very careful, and apparently if good is financed. So if there's any big fish out there, if there's anybody, maybe, I don't know, some millionaire that's watching this thing that says, hey, maybe Sean needs a few $1,000s, we could certainly use your help. And once again, my wife Melissa, who deserved none of this, who has been nothing but supportive and is nothing but wonderful. We raise cats and kittens and make so many people happy with what it is we do. So I want to say thank you again. I want to say how much I appreciate all of you, how much I love all of you, and infinite blessings out to you. Thank you. From Dr. Sean David Morton, good night and have a pleasant tomorrow. We done? We out?